What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Boozer here. Thanks for stopping by. Well, today's video, I'm going to make my reaction video to everything that's happening with the whole Hydra situation. I wanted to take a couple days to kind of reflect and absorb and digest everything that we basically had to deal with the past couple of days. I know the general overwhelming community sentiment is negative towards Hydra content, these Hydra changes in general. And it's not really like one particular change that's really set off people. It's this mess of changes. And then the exclamation mark at the end of it was basically what Plarium said to us on Friday, that everything was going according to plan, and they were basically, doubling down on what happened, what their changes were meant to do, and what their overall goals were. But anyways, I did compile a bunch of stuff here today, so let's go over that together. It's going to be a more of maybe a conversation type video. So if you guys are into that, so stick around for all of that. I'm going to have a Hydra running in the background. But anyways, honestly, this whole situation with Hydra, to me, it really started with their idea of how they wanted to deal with Wixwell. I don't know if Trunda was something that they really thought really hard about dealing with. I'm not going to say, fixing Trunda or whatever was right or wrong, or how they did it was right or wrong, because we all have our own real kind of ideas about it. I think Trunda probably needed to be adjusted because she was overwhelmingly strong, in large part to herself, but of course you have to have really strong curated teams to make her really sing, and one of the big parts is actually Yumiko. So you could actually say if Hydra was kind of busted because of Trunda was maybe responsible for like 50% of that, and then Yumiko would probably be, representing maybe like 30% of that slice of the problem, right? So in the end, I think the Trunda nerf was kind of like maybe a secondary byproduct, or maybe it was Plarium's attempt to nerf Trunda was maybe a result of them wanting to nerf Wixwell. They wanted to adjust Wixwell, but they couldn't really figure out a way to do it without busting it up everywhere. So they kind of I feel like they packaged in the Trunda fix along with the Wixwell fix. And so what happened was that this is the digest here. What is the fuss about Wixwell and Hydra? So there's recently been talks that assume that it would be only change. So here's the big thing. People were saying that there was going to be they found some code in the data mine for raid that said something about a shield cap, and then people started speculating whether it was or was not a nerf to Wixwell. So what happened was that people were saying it wasn't, and people saying it was. Ultimately, I think people said it wasn't. I got confirmation that they said it was going to happen, and then Plarium, what they said was something along these lines, basically saying, well, it's not going to be the only nerf. Right? It's not going to be only a nerf. And I think maybe some people were caught off by surprise because they felt like maybe Wixwell was not going to be nerfed and left alone. So that was kind of like the first tip of the iceberg where people were getting really upset because they thought, oh, this, community champion, certainly wouldn't be nerfed by Plarium, especially after they, kind of don't mention it, or kind of, backhandedly say like, oh, it won't be nerfed. I don't know. I think there was a little bit of miscommunication there, and I think it's a result of Plarium trying to be private about it. I think Plarium was trying to be private about it, but in doing so, they really, kind of knotted it up to the point where we didn't know what was going on. So the level of transparency just wasn't there. So ultimately, the transparency part, and then obviously players feeling deceived about Wixwell, and then obviously that hurt the community sentiment right away. So that was the problem with Wixwell. Wixwell was not properly communicated, and then obviously the community was upset. This digest was from October 4th, so it was over a month ago. So you can kind of see how everybody is kind of building up this frustration over the past month or 5 or 6 weeks or so. So after Plarium basically implemented all these changes for Hydra all at once, taking away the the taunt mechanic, making it no longer useful or as useful as it was before. So basically Wixwell teams no longer could rely on taunt. In addition to that, they reduced the size of the shields that Wixwell could have further basically just destroying the entire Yannicka build for Hydra. To their credit, they did make it so that Wixwell still works relatively well in Clan Boss. It's just not as well, and it's, you know, in my opinion, it was a little bit busted that you could do like 400 million without really trying, just with Wixwell team. So I feel like that was a decent change, but I think gutting the whole taunt thing was a little bit overboard. They didn't really need to do that because that just made that mechanic kind of useless in this game in general. But anyway, so they spoke here in this digest, you know, from October 17th. They basically said there's some issues going on with the AI, some bugs along with the behavior. I tested this in Hydra, like before the Hydra changes happened in a test server, and I noticed, I'm like, is the AI usually this bad? I remember I asked, I think I said that in a video. I was like, is this AI usually this bad? Because it was noticeable, right? It was noticeable. But anyway, so now it's really noticeable, and you know, Plarium has it on their radar, and they're thinking about doing something to it. It's interesting that Plarium mentions that they wanted to basically have more diversity in Hydra, and that's why they're making these changes. However, they did really funk up like a bunch of, you know, strategies that were beyond were beyond Trunda, and people were working on strategies to work around not having Trunda or having secondary teams be competitive and so forth, right? So the fact that they made these changes has made it quite difficult for anybody without Trunda, because Trunda, even though was adjusted and the boss was adjusted to kind of counteract Trunda in a way, Trunda is still the best. And as we've had weeks and weeks of testing, Trunda is the best by still a significant margin. The margin is maybe not as big as it was before all these updates came, but it's still an insurmountable amount. No secondary team can come close to the amount of damage that Trunda can produce at this moment. And there's really no other strategy outside of having... I can't even imagine right now what other strategies can pop up to really challenge Trunda teams in terms of damage. The discrepancy is just too high. So it's interesting that Plarium mentions that they want diversity, more teams and tactics. Well, you just killed off a couple a couple strategies and tactics that we were kind of working on, right? Like ally attack, multi-hitters. That's a big chunk of you know, your champion base, right? And then so people should rightfully be upset about that. And it looks really, you know, clownish. It looks really clownish on Plarium's part for saying these things, and then obviously you know, doing the opposite. So they also talk about, you know, the AI bugs and the behaviors and stuff. So, you know, obviously they were going to fix that. And ultimately we saw what happened with their fix, and it was a big mess. But we'll get into that. They talk about rebalances and how it's important, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? Like things were not balanced for a long time. People got upset, and then they started, you know, balancing champions this year, 2 per month. That was their pledge to the player base, right? 2 per month, guys. Well, there's freaking like 800 champions in the game. So how many years is it going to take to go over even the bottom half of the champion pool? Right? Like it's just ridiculous. And also rebalancing. I mean, rebalancing should have been done years ago. All right. We all know there was some kind of issue with Trunda's attack not working properly. And it should have been done. It should have been done. And you know what? Plarium was snake bit, right? They were a little bit gun shy with nerfing or fixing or whatever Trunda many years ago, mainly because they got such negative reception from the community. And in my opinion, the community maybe had too much of a good thing with Trunda being so strong in Arena back in the day, and they didn't want that to go away. And because of that, maybe Plarium was a bit gun shy and they didn't want to touch Trunda at all. So in some way, we kind of did this to ourselves almost, right? Like, and now we're in this spot where Plarium's trying to fix this multi-year problem with Trunda, and they're really mucking this up. Hydra is really becoming like a content area that was kind of enjoyable for more. It was an enjoyable piece that gave people a lot of progress, weekly progress. So it's like relatively tangible progress that you can see in a relatively short amount of time. it's not everybody's cup of tea because it's, manual and all that stuff. A lot of it, and it's very complex, right? And it requires deep roster. But as for end game content, I think it's pretty decent, in my opinion. All right, so the next little note that Plarium gave us was literally a day after the previous one, and said thanks to our attentiveness and feedback, they were able to figure out some bugs in their AI behavior. I mean, how much testing do they really do in the back end, right? Like all this stuff, they always talk about how complex everything is. Things are complex. Yes, things are complex, right? There's six Hydra heads, there's 6 champions fighting them, and then, there's a rotating, set of Hydra heads, and they all do a bunch of different stuff, and, there's 800 champions in the game or whatever amount. So it's very complex. But how much real testing happens in the background that they don't notice things like ally attack not working properly, or having like Serpent's Will like basically show up on all the heads when they spawn back, and that's just leading to a very poor gaming experience. Like that's one of my biggest concerns, is that the gaming experience with all the Serpent Will, when all the heads spawn with Serpent's Will, basically they have 100% damage reduction, and it's just like a really crappy experience. Like how does anybody that play the game think that's okay? Like it's just not fun. Like first you go from, yeah, all the heads are dead, I'm hitting them, to all the heads are alive and I'm doing nothing, and I'm just running down the turn meter, the turns on my run. So it's, I don't know. It's a little bit baffling, and I think we kind of know the answer, that they kind of don't do anything. But I don't really want to throw them under a bus for that. But maybe they do. Maybe they do some different types of testing. And for their credit, they are pretty quick at our responding to our feedback. So within 2 weeks time, they already acknowledged all this stuff, and they're already trying to implement some fixes on their end. So they're already mentioning some issues on their end, and then they're saying that there's possibilities of adjusting multipliers in the future and all that stuff. So I mean, like I said, this is like 2 weeks after the big update launch after Wixwell, trying to fix Wixwell, shields, Yannicka, taunt, and all that stuff. So they're kind of on top of it. They're monitoring it, and they're trying their best to fix things. But honestly, how much testing actually happens? Like these are some very like low-hanging fruit, quality of life things, gameplay things. If they played this, they would just be like, this isn't fun, right? All right, so we come around to their next post about 2 weeks later. This is November 1st. So they're trying to reiterate what their goals are with Hydra. They want Hydras to go first. They want Hydras to devour you. So these are fundamental things about Hydra. That's fine, right? That's fine. So they're saying, they're trying to explain their goals and what they want Hydra to look like. That gives us a little bit of something to work with, right? They're saying that, they're going to fix the AI. It's been a couple weeks now, but they know it's on their radar, so they're going to fix some of the AI stuff. And then they pump their own tires by saying, oh, there's more diversity and all that stuff. Of course, there's going to be more diversity than pre-update, because you just gutted like a bunch of tactics that no longer work, right? So of course people are going to be trying different things, and of course that's analytical point, like it just, and also the sample size and all that stuff. Of course people are going to be trying new stuff. Like I'm in clan cluster whatever, multiple, and I'm just seeing like, just do whatever, guys, try new things out, see what works and all that stuff. So of course people are going to be trying new things. Of course you're going to see increased team diversity. Like, give me a break. So that, to me, that is a very weak like analytical data point for them. And for them to put that in there, like, I don't think that's necessary, but I think they just wanted to maybe throw a little bit of water on the fire for a little bit, because they've been under the gun, based on these digests, basically since October 4th. So basically for a whole month, they've been under the gun, getting a ton of heat from the community already. All right, guys. So fast forward basically 1 week from that November 1st post, and we have their response to the 9.40 update that basically just really messed up Hydra. Like, they messed it up to the point where we were trying to adjust to the new kind of environment after the updates that fixed Wixwell and Taunt and all that stuff. We were still trying to adjust for it. We were finding new teams and all that stuff. We were realizing that basically Trent is still the best by, huge multiples and whatever. But we were still, trying out new champions, right? There's some synergies that were really strong. For example, Teox, Ayasu, There's a lot of champions that are really good, like Carnage. They're just really good damage dealers that were not Trunda. So you can kind of see here that Trunda is still the outlier, but we're able to kind of elevate other teams using different strategies. Ally attack, so Mikage teams, ally attacks. You have Insenza, like those type of teams, those type of champions that bring the A1 with the ally attackers in. So people were trying out those teams and had various success, but obviously not levels of Trunda. And then you have the update that came in 9.4 that basically really messed up kind of everything, right? So multi-attack champions and ally attack champions were now being basically stopped when you attack into a decapitated head. So for example, when you attack into a decapitated head, previously before 9.40, you could have your damage basically exceed the HP cap if it was part of one attack. So for example, an ally attack was basically one attack with many attacks going into it. But apparently Plarium says there's some kind of technical thing going on in the background where they had to fix that. So now the ally attack that goes into a head with the HP bar being fully depleted, your ally attack basically stops and no additional damage will go into it. This also, counts against multi-attack. So if you have basically like a triple hit champion, for example, and your first hit kills, depletes the HP bar on the decapitated head, that decapitated head will spawn a brand new head and your A1 multi-hit attack will stop. So it's basically pushing people towards having big hit champions, right? Big hit champions, no longer small hit champions or small hit, activating champions. Again, like I said, this just kills off a strategy, a tactic that people were using and working on. The other thing that's really bad is that they, advertise some of these champions in like 10x and, progressives, all that stuff. And it doesn't feel good when you're hunting for Teox or Ieyasu and you're spending tons of money and you don't get those champions. And then or you get those champions thinking that you have found like a possible solution and it's not. And then it's not. And Plarium's response to this was basically, well, this was a fix. This was a fix. This was always a problem. This was a fix. So they're doubling down. They're basically doubling down on what happened. I could see this if they just said, oh, sorry, guys, this was a mistake. Like this shouldn't happen. Like this respawning instantly of the head and all that stuff. Oh, that shouldn't have happened. It's a mistake. No problem. We'll fix it back. But for them to basically say, oh, that's a problem. We need to fix that. At what point did they actually say that was a problem? At what point? Hasn't this always, at what point? I don't see it. At what point did they say this was a problem? But anyways, they said it was a problem and they're fixing it, to the surprise of everyone. And I think that's kind of like the thing, right? They basically surprised everyone. I think everybody was surprised that things were not working, as expected again. And keep in mind, what they were trying to do was basically fix the AI on some of the champions that were doing ally attacks and all that stuff for, the month of October. And in doing so, I don't even know if that AI fix actually fixed anything, to be honest. And in doing so, they fixed this problem that they never ever specified. So in the month that they were talking about fixing AI for ally attacks and all that stuff, they discovered this problem, didn't communicate it, and then fixed it. And it's just ridiculous. And the fact is that they're saying there's some technical limitation with everything. To their credit, they do mention that it was not communicated and it's their mistake, and they'll do better next time. Honestly, they've done miscommunications many, many times. It's not even like CCs are not aware, because I think the community managers that communicate with the CCs are not aware. I think it's not them withholding the information, but I think they are just not aware, and then this stuff happens. And then the best they can do is apologize and say they won't happen again. Of course, this stuff happens all the time. They've communicated things in the past where things have been totally wrong, and all they say is, oh, sorry. That's it. Like, there's no nothing. There's no nothing about it, right? There's no there's no anything about it. Like, they can just say, "Oh, sorry," and what can we do? The customers can't really do anything, right? The customers, like, you know, like when you go into like anywhere, when you go into like, I don't know, think of a place where you go into the grocery store and you complain about something. You can complain to somebody, and you can get a response. You can get a response from a manager or something, and they'll try to make it right. In this case, we can complain to Plarium, and all they're gonna do is give us a sorry, and then nothing else happens. That's the best we can get. So it does feel very bad. And I'll tell you that, guys, this, like, even if they're, you know, Plarium trying to sell this as like, oh, hey guys, this is a new Hydra. Our perception of Hydra should be, you know, shelved, right? Like, oh, no longer are we doing, you know, whatever damage. You know, forget everything about what you guys knew about Hydra for the last 2 years. This is a new Hydra. This is new content, right? That's what Plarium says here in this blurb. They say it's new content. Well, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to tell you, Plarium, that this new content really sucks to play. Like, it really, really sucks to play. It's not fun to play this versus the old Hydra. Yes, the old Hydra is busted, maybe like, you know, 10x times busted, right? People are doing insane amounts of damage, blah, 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 blah. But in this new Hydra, people are still doing insane amounts of damage, and the multiples of the best versus the second are still incredibly high. So nothing was really fixed on that part. You're strangling the lower end players because now they're having a hard time reaching top chests for Hydras, low end Hydras. So you're strangling them out. You're making it obviously more difficult for higher end players because now their accounts are more stressed from basically not having or chasing options that no longer are viable or not as viable anymore, or not more viable than basically like free options. For example, like Thor, for example, right? You take Thor and you're like, okay, Thor does a lot of damage, but I'm going to chase this champion that's going to do so much more damage. Well, now I chased a champion that doesn't really do that much more damage. So why am I spending all this money to chase this champion when I could use a fusion like Thor? So this new content, it strangles their entire player base from top to bottom. No one is really happy about this because even if you like these changes or agree with these changes, like to some extent, I do kind of agree that the damage was getting kind of outrageous, and it might have been stifling some of their, you know, some of their creativity or some of their flexibility with how they want to deal with Hydra. But I think by basically choking out everybody, choking them out, it really, really hurt just basically everybody. No one's really happy about this. It just doesn't play good. Even if you agree with the changes, the play style of this just doesn't play very good. I'm going to go over some comments here on the public Discord from some of their representatives. So we got here with patch 9.40, there was a change to Hydra that broke ally attacks and multi-attacks. So we just went over that here in the last couple of minutes. Further damage from ally attack and multi-attacks dealt to exposed neck is not counted to overall damage anymore. Instead, the head will respawn in between the attacks, as we mentioned, right? This is being looked at the moment. So they do say that maybe Plarium will look into it, even though Plarium says it was a problem and this is a fix. Okay. So, you know, Prada says, I'm trying to make sure that I understand this clearly so that I can pass the information to my clan. Is the attack on the down head supposed to stop when the HP bar hits 0? Is it supposed to stop? So is this intended? So it says right now in game is working as intended. So Plarium did say, like I said, it's a fix. Yes, I know it makes 0 sense. Why severing a head prevents further damage from multi-hits and ally attacks. But they tell me that they made this change on purpose. I can only say that the mod team is presenting players' concerns and there's ongoing discussion. So it's pretty gross, right? It's pretty ridiculous. They're doubling down on it. Usually when they double down like this, they're not going to immediately do some kind of action. I do feel like their response on Friday was kind of predictable because the response from the 9.40 fix was so terrible, overwhelmingly terrible, that they responded on Friday right away. I felt like that was expected. What I expect them to do is probably respond next week. I expect them to respond next week with some kind of explanation, because them saying, sorry guys, this is intended, live with it, like this is new content, like I don't think that's good enough. I don't think that's good enough, especially with the outcry that's going on right now. So I want to show you guys what I mean about this multi-hit and ally attack change. I want to show you guys in action what happens here. So you guys can watch here. So Harima is going to use her A2 into a head that is near death or near respawn. So she hits once. She hits once and it respawns instantly. Her A2 is a triple hit. You can see the sliver of health. One hit, comes back. So that's what I'm talking about. Previous to 9.40 last week, that was not an issue. So her full triple hit A2 damage would go into it and then the respawn head would happen. Now her animation and attack is interrupted and then the head will respawn. So here's another example. Here's the ally attack version. So here, sliver of health, ally attack from Mikage goes in, and only two people attack. Only two people attack, the head respawns. Did you see that? Only two people attack instead of the whole team, and then it respawns. And then, of course, the damage is not calculated because no hits happen. Respawn. So we see that they're in action. All right, guys. So I don't want to be like fully negative on this video. I wanted to provide you guys with maybe some solutions that maybe would work. I did put a lot of thought into this as to how I would maybe go about changing or fixing Hydra a little bit. So, and to make these kind of more realistic, right? Because a lot of times the changes don't really make sense, or there's changes that have dominoes that will change something else. So I did put a lot of thought into that. So anyways, we all know this Hydra uploader background here, backdrop. What happened to this head? What happened to this head? Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was a result of what happened during COVID or whatever. Or the incident, the war that's going on in Ukraine. But basically there was some kind of work delays, right? And basically this head, which was basically advertised as the extra head that was coming for Hydra, never came to be. The other thing that never came to be was actually Ultra Nightmare Hydra. And they kind of just left it. I think this was a good time for them to, instead of basically buffing Hydra and basically, like I said, strangling everybody else, all our teams, all our champions, they could have released Ultra Nightmare Hydra and release a new Hydra head, a 7th Hydra head, which would be this guy. This guy should have been released. And they could basically mold this head into anything they want to basically handle the problems that were pretty much active, or most of the problems that were active. So if they were thinking about this before Wixwell, or the changes to Wixwell and obviously the shield and taunt and all that stuff, they could have had this head maybe do something that destroys shields, double damage against shields. Maybe all heads deal double damage to shields when it's alive or something like that. They could have had it be some kind of shield counter. They could have had it be a buff removal head, perhaps. Remove mass duration reduction on all our buffs. If that was a problem, they could have had it do something like that. They could have had this head, when active, perhaps, put a stop to cooldown reduction abilities. So put a stop to Yumiko, constantly resetting abilities and all that stuff. They could have had some kind of negative attached to the, basically having cooldown reduction on your skills. And, considering that this head looks like a lightning head, they could have made this head super fast, super accurate, maybe provide it with a stun, a stun that maybe is irresistible. Something like that. Another CC, another hard CC that breaks speed tune teams. Makes it more difficult for players to, have a team that basically, can deal excessive amounts of damage, or has cheesy teams or whatever. But they could have definitely fashioned it in a way to handle some of the more meta, strategies without actually breaking the strategies, so that players can actually still fine tune the strategies to make it work against this head. And since the head can be killed, that's another bit of strategy there, right? It doesn't mean that it's like a blanket, solution or blanket death of that ability. So there is RNG involved, right? And of course, once you go to Ultra Nightmare difficulty, the heads naturally get harder because you just scale them up in terms of all their stats. Higher accuracy, higher speed. Make them 300 speed, make them 400 Accuracy minimum, make them 500 resistance minimum to resist any of that stuff, right? You could even add a new, almighty effect to them if you wanted to. But they had some room to grow. They had room to grow with the Ultra Nightmare content feature, right? The difficulty. Obviously, make the rewards significantly better. Not so better, but make them better. Make them better. They wanted the 1.2 personal reward chest to be more harder to get for more people. That's what happened in the end. And I think the 1.2 billion was maybe a little bit too low, considering that Hydra's been out for 2 years already. Maybe, sorry, I don't, maybe I say that disingenuously to starter players or newer players to Hydra. But, in the grand scheme of things, 1.2 bill is probably a little bit too low, right? So they could have tweaked that a little bit, right? Or tweak the rewards from that, or tweak the clash rewards. Those are small tweaks. But adding the Ultra Nightmare and this one head, I think would have gave them a little bit more runway in terms of dealing with the main problems in Hydra at that time, which was, obviously whatever, taunt or whatever, right? Hydra, Trunda. I think Trunda still probably needed a little bit of an adjustment, just because she could probably blow up this, 7th head, this lightning head, and then still get away with it, still make the teams really, really strong that way. But I mean, it was an option. So if you guys are interested, I did put just some notes here that kind of made sense. Like make the, lightning head have TM reduction, cooldown reduction, disruption effects. So basically any kind of turn meter boosting or cooldown reduction, have the head do some kind of disruption, right? Maybe remove buffs or something, or attack. Give the head double damage to shield, or maybe increase the shield damage for all the enemy heads. Give them AoE buff reduction. Give them an AoE stun, perhaps. Maybe make it irresistible. Maybe make it high accuracy. Some changes that they made that I feel could have been adjusted was the taunt update. They didn't have to make taunt completely useless. They could have made taunt basically just let the taunt champion be eaten, right? Like they didn't have to just completely bypass the taunt. They could have just eaten the taunt. That's fine. That's fine, right? Like they didn't have to completely kill it. The other thing is, I think the decapped HP pool probably should be increased just to allow us some more flexibility in terms of dealing damage. It's more fun to basically hit, be a damage pinata and just keep hitting it. So it's just more fun that way. The Serpent's Will. So this is a big one, right? So the 100% damage reduction, I think, really kills the gameplay. My suggestion is basically either completely rework the Serpent's Will or just give them the Serpent Barrier. Basically give them a life barrier that gives them, high damage reduction that you have to kind of kill through before you can reach the, the meat, right? So, similar to how Stone Skin heavily reduces your damage incoming, but it can be destroyed. So it's not a time thing. It's just, an extra damage HP pool or barrier or shield that keeps their bodies alive, but it allows us to deal damage against it. Even though if it's like a greatly reduced amount of damage. And I think having the damage count would be really helpful. And it's just overall gameplay. It's okay, at least I can try to interact with his head by trying to do damage to it. And if you have a really powerful team, doing damage to it is still beneficial to you. So it kind of makes sense. Why give it 100% damage reduction completely? I don't know. I think it can still be adjusted this way. If their goal, which it is to allow them to basically get an instant turn, or a turn, get a chance to go, why not just give the Hydras an instant turn when they respawn? This way, players still have some control, right? They still have some control when they want to respawn the heads, whether they're prepared to handle an instant hit from them. This actually provides a layer of strategy in the game, right? I think that, that fulfills their concern about an instant turn, and then that allows the players some agency, some control about what they're doing. So, that's just my suggestion. And in terms of the new ally attack, multi-attack fix, what they could do is just respawn the head and just have the damage go into the new respawn head. Yes, the respawn head will have, damage reduction or whatever. But actually, allowing your attacks to basically register debuffs or chip away some damage, it's still relatively useful, right? It's still useful. So having that would be better than basically having your attack animation completely stop, like significantly better than having it completely stop. So those are kind of like my changes that I really like thought about in terms of what they could do to update and fix this thing. But I think some of those are like way too late to be even implemented now. So Plarium 100% dropped the ball on this. The player base is 100% pissed off and not engaged with this at all. Like people are like leaving and being super upset. I think people would actually just boycott this content because from experience, people are just like, yeah, I'm not into Hydra anymore and I'm out. Like they're just done. Like Hydra is actually enjoyable for some people in terms of like I said, progressing their account and all that stuff. But now they're just like, yo, I'm out. Like this is ridiculous. I spent 2 years building this. I'm out. And rightfully so, right? Like it's very upsetting. It's very upsetting. It's very upsetting. It's not even just one champion that they nerfed. It's like many champions that, you know, basically got fixed. Anyways, the things that they did that were actually good, 1,000 turn count, I think that's a good thing. That's probably a thing that, you know, probably should have been done like earlier so that they can limit the amount of damage done. If they wanted to keep like the personal reward chest, like, you know, a little bit difficult, 1.2 bill, you know, reduce the turn count. That made sense, right? Increasing devour counter active, that's fine. Make the Hydra, you know, a little bit more difficult to deal with in the later turns. That's fine, right? That's for stronger teams and all that stuff. That's fine. The personal reward chests were great. I think they were probably implemented, you know, I think they're a little bit too good relative to like Clash rewards because I noticed people kind of giving less, you know, less attention towards winning Clash because winning Clash is just not a huge bonus compared to, you know, getting participation rewards just from the personal award chest. So I think they were, you know, they're definitely very, very good value. But even those things are not even that heavily celebrated because a 1,000 turn counter right now in the way that Hydra is kind of set up requires you to do manual runs to get the best outcome. Just the way that the Hydras are set up, the way they respawn with the Serpent's Will and all that stuff. Doing manual is still the best way. And doing manual, even with less turns, is still incredibly time sink. So for me, I'm spending more time doing Hydra now, even though the turn count went down. So it's not even like universally a good thing. It's not even universally a good thing. Increased devour counter, I'm not sure, like it's definitely not universally a good thing because people don't want it to be that more difficult, right? It's much more difficult with the increased devour counter, but it's not even a universal good thing. The universal good thing is probably the personal reward chest. It's a great way to give everybody something for participating. And the rewards are good. The rewards are good. So that is a universal good thing. It's something extra without taking away anything else. But I feel like ultimately Plarium probably did all this stuff to align everything together with the personal chest in the end. So, you know, even universally, the personal chest maybe wasn't even the best thing that to happen to us. Anyways, guys, super long video, a bit of a rant, bit of a reflective view of everything. I try my best to be, you know, objective, not to, you know, whatever about it. But ultimately, the gameplay sucks. A lot of people are upset, rightfully so, and Plarium needs to respond. If Plarium doesn't respond, I feel that that is unlikely. I think this situation definitely warrants a response. They're not going to just sweep it under the rug. They said they're monitoring everything. I've heard things like, oh, Trunda's being monitored. This ally attack stuff's going to be monitored. So everything's being monitored right now. I think the best we can do is basically just voice our opinion, make sure our feedback is being heard, which is questionable, to be honest. But they know that the general sentiment is not good. So I definitely feel like a change will come. It's just when and what. So let's hope that they can right the ship before the ship is sunk. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching today and really appreciate it. Thank you for your patience with everything, with the content and all that stuff. Hopefully you guys have a great day. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. It's a big topic. Let me know what you guys think about everything. Yeah, have a good one. See you guys in the next video.